Hello, everyone. Today's joke of the day is why do we tell actors to break a leg? Stay tuned to find out. Our learning target for today is I can solve equations involving negative variables and fractions. Now remember, when we're solving equations, we want to isolate the variable, and the variable cannot be negative. Okay, so we want to isolate the variable, means get it by itself, right? So only the variable on that side of the equal sign, which means that the variable also cannot be negative. Okay, so for example, let's look at number 1 here. Now we have negative x plus 13 equals 23. Now I'm going to draw a line here to help me keep track of which side everything's on. And everything we do to one side of the equation, we have to do to the other because we want the equation to be balanced. Right now it's balanced, and to keep it balanced, every operation we do to one side, we have to do to the other. Now we're going to isolate the variable by doing inverse operations, and we start with addition and subtraction. Now to get rid of this plus 13, we're going to subtract 13 from both sides. Okay, so that will cancel out and we'll be left with negative x equals 23 minus 13 is 10. Now the x is not isolated yet because we have that negative. Now I like to think of this as having an invisible, the coefficient here is really like a 1, right? So we have this invisible 1 in front of the x here. And that's like saying negative 1 times x. So in order to get rid of that negative variable, or that negative sign, we're going to divide both sides by negative 1. Okay, now we're going to have negative 1 divided by negative 1. Well, a negative divided by a negative makes it positive, and 1 divided by 1 is just 1. So we're left with x by itself equals 10 divided by negative 1, which is negative 10. All right, and you can check your answer by substituting negative 10 back in for x, and it will work out to give us 23. All right, let's look at example number 2 here. Now in this case we have a pretty similar thing, but it's 15 minus x. Okay, but we still have this positive 15. So to get rid of it, we'll subtract 15 on both sides. Okay, and this negative stays with the x. So we still have a minus x equals 30 minus 15. Okay, so we have a positive 15 then. And we still have this negative x equals 15. So we still have that negative x there. And last time I divided by negative 1. This time you'll see that if I multiply both sides by negative 1, it will also give us, get rid of that negative. So if I'm going to actually multiply both sides by negative 1, okay, and then we get negative 1 minus x, or times negative x, gives us a plain x, equals 15 times negative 1 is negative 15. And that's our answer, x equals negative 15. Now let's look at a couple involving fractions. When we want to get rid of a fractional coefficient, what we want to do here is multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, and what I mean by that is the reciprocal of a fraction is just the inverse of it. So you put the numerator in the denominator and the denominator in the numerator. And you'll see why this works out. Okay, so if we have 2/3 x equals negative 30, okay, and we multiply by 3/2, okay, we don't want to try to divide by 2/3 because if we're doing that in our calculator, it's going to give us maybe not quite the right answer. But here, if we multiply by 3/2, now these 3's are going to cancel because there's 3 in the numerator and in the denominator. Okay, so we can factor out a 3, so that gives us a 1. And the 2's are going to cancel out as well because 2 goes into 2 one time. Okay, so really we're left with 1/1. So we have 1/1 times 1/1 x. Oh, and I almost forgot to multiply by 3/2 on this side as well. Okay, and that's really just 1, right? And it really just leaves us with x. So we have x on the left-hand side here. I'll even drop my little line down the middle there. And then we have negative 30 times 3/2. Well, that's really negative 30/1, okay? And 2 goes into 30 15 times, or 30 divided by 2 is 15. So we can factor out a 2 here. Well, that will become a 1, and this will become a 15. That's just simplifying fractions when we multiply. And then we get negative 15 times 3, multiply across the top, gives us negative 45. And 1 times 1 gives us 1. So negative 45 over 1, or just negative 45. So our x in this case is equal to negative 45. Let's look at one more of those. Okay, in this case we have a negative, so whatever we multiply by is going to have to be negative. And the reciprocal of 1/3 is going to be 3. Okay, so we have to multiply both sides times a negative 3 over 1. Okay, times a negative 3 over 1, or just times a negative 3. Okay, so in this case, our negatives will cancel, and our 3's will cancel. So we're just left with x on the left side, which equals negative 7 times negative 3 is going to be a positive 21. So x equals 21. All right, one last example here. Here we have negative 14 minus x equals negative 4. Whoa. Sorry about that. Okay, negative 14 minus x equals negative 4. All right, we're going to get rid of that negative 14 by adding 14 to both sides. All right, those will cancel on the left, and we'll be left with negative x equals negative 4 plus 14 is 10. And then in this case, I'm going to divide by negative 1 again on both sides. Okay, that gives me a positive x equals 10 divided by negative 1 is negative 10. And that's how you solve equations involving negative x's, negative variables, and fractions. So for today's joke of the day, why do we tell actors to break a leg? Because every play has a cast. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.